Good morning, everybody. This is Adrian with PrepAgent. Just logging in right now. We're getting on a little bit early so that we can make sure we're doing this right. Because as you can see, we're having a little bit of few technical issues to work out real quick. So give us half a minute. Can everybody hear me? If you can hear me, give me a thumbs up, please. Anybody? Kevin, thank you very much. All right, we're starting to figure this out a little bit. Yes, fantastic. Hope everybody's having a great morning. Let me see if I can fill your screens a little bit more. Okay, let's see how that looks. Good morning, Suna. Hope everybody's having a great morning / afternoon if you're on the East Coast. If you've been listening to the last week's worth of webinars, oh, hang on a second. If I go wider, I'll have trouble following the chat. Hey, you made it just in time, Taylor. Happy to have you here. This is okay. All right. Okay, I think we're about ready to get started. You see Joe typing in. He's letting everybody know that he and Arthur are on the chat. And my name is Adrian. I'm leading my first webinar. Joe's trying to puff me up a little bit. We'll see how this goes. If you've been following the webinars for the last week or so, Joe's been giving me a lot of shout outs. He and Arthur just welcomed me into the PrepAgent family a little bit ago. My main functions, if you've been contacting member support or anything like that, has been to support all of you guys. I deal with the member support tickets, question feedback, helping revise and do research. So basically, I am here for you guys 100%. That's going to free Joe and Arthur up to make the service even better and to add a lot more into it. And I'm pretty excited about all of that. And now to do webinars too. Yeah, we'll see how this first one goes, Joe. Now, obviously, you guys are used to interacting with Joe. I'm not going to be Joe. Nobody can be that great at this. I'm not going to have the same fantastic fashion advice, don't have the same great singing voice, but I am absolutely here with the same purpose, and that's to help you guys get past this exam. So we're going to go ahead and get into some concepts to start off. Today's topic is property ownership. And so we will sort of start with the beginning. Wait. Yeah, Arthur, you do webinars? Let's go ahead and start with the bundle of rights. Does everybody remember what the bundle of rights are? Go ahead and hit it up in the chat if you guys are ready. If you need a few more minutes, just let me know. I can slow my roll a little bit. I'm pretty excited. So maybe I'm trying to get started a little early. Welcome, Phil. You're ready to go. So bundle of rights, we've got 5 of them that are usually referred to. Does everybody remember what those are? Nice job, Shannon. The bundle of rights that we usually talk about that come with property ownership are the rights of possession, of control, exclusion, enjoyment, and disposition. The right of possession, obviously, that's the right to own the title of your property. The right of control allows you to dictate the use of your property within legal limits, of course. The right of exclusion gives you the right to exclude others from using or entering the property. You get to say who's trespassing and who is welcome to your party. The right of enjoyment, that gives you the right to use the property and enjoy the property in any legal manner. And then the right of disposition gives you the right to sell, rent, transfer the ownership of the property at will. If you've watched some of Joe's videos, you may have seen him refer to this bundle as a handful of straws. Each straw represents one of these rights, and each one of these straws can be taken away. Things like liens and easements, judgments against can all take away one of these bundles of rights, and you get them returned to you when that issue is handled. Right, encumbrances on the property, like Joe says. Sorry, Anne, what's that? Never heard of the bundle itself? We'll let Joe follow up with you there. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Well, are there any questions, first of all, before I move on to the next part? Joe is there, obviously, to help handle all of these questions. So, oh, something of straws, the bundle of straws. Joe will just go on there. I'm going to go ahead and move forward. So we're going to stay pretty tight to a couple of concepts today. The first one of those is the types of property that there are. Does everybody know the two types of property, the main two types of property that we talk about? Thanks, Malfred. I'm working on it. So two main types of property. Yep, real and personal. Real property, anybody want to give a stab at what that sounds like? What is real property? What's the easiest way to remember what real property is? Perfect. Immovable and real goes with the real estate. Those are exactly the two ways that we remember these. A lot of times, real property, obviously, your house is going to be something real. If you have a pool, can't really pack that up and take it with you. Things like roses, trees, and shrubberies are all real property. Unless you're a Monty Python fan, then the shrubbery can be picked up and taken with you. Personal, there you go. Somebody's talking about personal is movable. Sherry is on top of that. Personal property is movable. It goes with the person, just like personal. A lot of times, those are things like furniture, art, houseplants, things that you're going to take with you there. What about fixtures? Does everybody remember how to tell if something is a fixture? Alfred, chattel, exactly. Maria, that's what I was looking for. Terry and Jamila and Malfred. Method is the first part of Maria. Adaptability, relationship, intention, and agreement. These are all different ways that we can use to determine if something is a fixture or not. And why is that important? Because personal property can become real property by becoming a fixture. Nice. I see everybody is killing it with the Maria references. Yep, exactly, Amanda. If it's built in, it's personal until you build it in and then it becomes real, becomes part of the real estate. So the last thing I want to touch on, the questions that we're going to do, are the types of tenancy. So does everybody know the two main types of tenancy? And it basically has to do with, are you a solo tenant or are there several of you? Two types of tenancy: concurrent and severalty. Exactly, that's what we're looking for. Freehold and leasehold are actually types of estates, Jamila. Yep, there you go. What we're talking about right now, severalty and concurrent. So severalty, anybody want to define that for me? Which one is severalty? One owner, thank you. That's what I was looking for there. Severalty is ownership of an estate by yourself. Not too complicated. It's just you. You have the estate and all the bundle of rights that go with it. Concurrent gets a little more complex. There's several different types of concurrent, but there's only two that we really deal with on the national level. So anybody want to take a stab at what the two main types of concurrent ownership are? Concurrent tenancy, excuse me. We've got two main forms of concurrent ownership. And there we go, Suna. Joint tenancy and tenancy in common. Joint tenancy is generally just, joint tenancy has the right of survivorship, and that's the main thing that separates it for me. There are a couple other, we'll talk about the unities in just a second, but the right of survivorship, if you haven't encountered that concept before, basically means that if one of these tenants dies, the remaining share transfers to the joint tenant. If you have two tenants holding a property in joint tenancy, the death of one of them means that the other ends up as an owner in severalty. Kind of the main important concept of joint tenancy is the unities of time, title, interest, and possession. TTIP is the mnemonic for that. And basically that means that each of the tenants holds an exact share of time, title, interest, and possession. Yep, there you go, TTIP. So tenancy in common, how is that different than joint tenancy? Anybody want to take a shot at that one? Tenancy in common has a few differences. And as Joe is asking there, it has the unity of possession. That is the one unity that tenancy in common shares. There is no survivorship in tenancy of common, and any death of a member means that their share of that property passes to that member's heirs. And so with that, I want to go ahead and get started on the questions. Let's get this party rolling. Our first question here: which of the following individuals holds a license and is therefore not entitled to a claim of adverse possession? A person who held a property for 5 years after inheriting it from a parent, who was in adverse possession for 10 years, a person who has been entering an orchard and taking apples every year for 30 years. So this is actually off title or off topic of what I wanted to get at, but since we've started it, we'll go ahead and continue. A person who has been in possession of the property for 19 years, or a person who's been parking his car on a neighbor's property for 20 years without possession. What do you guys think? Which person holds a license? All right, B, exactly what you guys are talking about. A person who's been entering the orchard and taking apples every year for 30 years, entering the orchard to pick apples gives that person a license. And a license is a personal right that can be revoked at any time. We'll actually get into that in one of the future webinars. Didn't really give you the concepts behind that to start off with. That is my first webinar, my biggest first webinar faux pas of the day. Let's go ahead and get back on topic here real quick. So which of the following would be found in a business office? A trade fixture, an easement, none of the other options, or a fixture? What do you guys think? Which of these found in a business office? Keyword here in this question is business, and most of you guys are killing that. A trade fixture. Trade fixtures, items that are attached to the property but not considered real property because usually that business owner is going to pick them up and take it with them when they leave. That makes them personal property, even though they are something of a fixture. Trade fixture. Next question, which of the following is not considered an appurtenance? Trees, a swimming pool, trade fixture, or an easement? What does everybody think here? Which is not considered an appurtenance? See a lot of C's up there, and that is it, guys. That's it exactly. Trade fixture is not an appurtenance, again, because it doesn't run with the land. It's not really part of the real estate. Got some examples of what appurtenances are down here. Basically, things considered real property. So speaking of real property, which of the following is not considered real property? A house, fixtures, C, leasehold estate. Sorry, I haven't been saying that. A, B, C, and D. So A, a house, B, fixtures, C, leasehold estates, or D, a bearing wall. What do you guys think? Which of these is not real property? A little bit trickier after what we've been talking about, but I see a lot of people going for leasehold estate, and that's exactly it. A lease is actually considered personal property. Lease on an estate is considered personal property, not real property. Leasehold, yeah. A lease is a contract, as Joe says right there. So there you go, Taylor. Next up, we've got one of the main differences between real and personal property is that real property, A, can be held in joint tenancy, B, can be willed, C, is immovable, or D, is subject to depreciation over a period of time. What do you guys think? What's the main difference between real and personal property? Difference between real and personal is that real property is C, immovable. You guys are doing great. Real property, see a lot of explanations here, just trying to reinforce the types of things that are real property. I feel like you guys are pretty strong in this. Everybody's getting this one right. So let's move on to sort of a tenancy example. Excuse me. A family rents a vacation home from July 5th, 2017 to January 1st, 2018. Their tenancy would properly be classified as A, an estate for years, B, a fee simple estate, C, month to month, or D, a periodic tenancy. What do you guys think? Tenancy from July 5th, 2017 to January 1st, 2018. Right. The answer to this one is actually an estate for years. I see a lot of people throwing out periodic tenancy, and I can see how this one can easily get confused, but periodic is actually the same thing as month to month, as Joe's pointing out right there. An estate for years is basically a predefined set of time, amount of time, similar to most people's leases. You lease something for a year exactly, or even 6 months. Yeah, exactly. Like a summer rental, as opposed to periodic tenancy being month to month, um, something that is not so defined, that can really continue on forever or only for another couple of months. So moving on, as used in real property law, tenancy most nearly means the motor method of holding the motor method of holding title to real property by a lessee or owner. B, a tenant who has acted in excess of their rights. C, the obstinacy of a holdover tenant. Or D, the landlord-tenant relationship. What do you guys think? Tenancy most nearly means which of these? See a lot of the right answer out there. A, tenancy most nearly means the motor method of holding title to real property by a lessee or owner. Basically, as the explanation puts here, title vesting, just giving somebody the right to tenancy. Next question sticks with tenancy. In tenancy in common, there is always a unity of A, time, B, possession, C, title, or D, interest. We covered this one in the opening concepts. So keep in mind, we're talking about tenancy in common here. There is always a unity of which of these? Time, possession, title, or interest. Remember, guys, we're talking about tenancy in common here, not joint tenancy. There we go. I think that's what some people might have been just confusing joint tenancy with tenancy in common. There's only one unity with tenancy in common, and that's possession. Both tenants own shares in the property that they're talking about. They could have owned them for different lengths of time, which was the other most common answer I saw people throwing out there. Unity of possession is the only unity required for a tenancy in common. All right, I see you guys are keeping Joe busy in the chat. That's awesome. It's great to have him there, like answering everybody's questions. He's a little bit quicker at this than I am. So next question. In determining whether an item is a fixture, which of the following would not be considered? A, adaptation to the real estate. B, value of the item. C, method of attachment. And D, intention of the parties when the fixture was installed. So which of these is not part of Maria? Adaptation to the real estate, value of the item, method of attachment, or intention of the parties? Exactly. See everybody throwing out B, value of the item. No V in Maria, at least not the way that I'm used to spelling it. Method, adaptability, relationship, intention, and agreement covers these other three here. All right, so story problems. I'm going to talk about our good friends Keith and Ralph. Keith and Ralph bought a house as tenants in common. If Keith dies, which of the following statements about ownership of the house is correct? Tenants in common here is the concept we're looking at. So A, Ralph holds life estate ownership in Keith's share of the property. B, Ralph holds fee simple ownership in Keith's share of the property. C, it is divided with Ralph retaining Ralph's original interest and the balance going to Keith's estate. And D, it automatically becomes tenancy in severalty. What do you guys think here? Keep in mind, we're talking about tenants in common. One of the owners passes away. What happens to the shares? A lot of confusion on this one. Totally get it. This is story questions like this to me, are often the most confusing. But the correct answer here is C. The property, the ownership of the house, is divided. So Ralph keeps his original interest, but the balance gets willed to Keith's estate because we're talking about tenants in common. If we were talking about joint tenants, then we would automatically, ownership would automatically become tenancy in severalty. If you guys are confused about the A and B parts, maybe hit Joe up with that. He's really good with explanations on this particular one. But the main point here is tenancy in common. And unity of possession, keep in mind, is the only unity required. No automatic right of survivorship. Thus, Keith's interest does not go to Ralph. It goes to Keith's heirs. Sorry, Amanda, for exploding your head. Probably could have been a little more clear, but that's one of the reasons I wanted to get into a few of these questions like this, because tenancy and types of property, a lot of times when we're going over these concepts in the textbooks or going through the exams or reading our vocabulary, we really think we have it down. But when you put it into real life situations, it gets a little bit more tricky. And like I said, that's why I really wanted to touch on a couple of things like this. We're going to do another story question here. If my computer catches up, we're going to be talking about Nelson leasing his store space to Lupita for a restaurant. Lupita installs her ovens, booths, counters, and other equipment. When do these items become real property? Keep in mind, we're talking about a restaurant, which is a business. So A, when they're installed. B, when the lease expires if the items are not taken by the tenant. C, when the lease takes effect. Or D, when Lupita defaults on her rental payments. What does everybody think? Nelson's leasing his store space to Lupita. She installs her ovens, booths, counters, all of her equipment for making food. When do these items become real property? Right. Another one that's a little bit tricky. So what we're talking about here is Lupita and her trade fixtures. When would trade fixtures possibly become part of real property? And the answer is when the lease expires, if the items are not taken by the tenant. Trade fixtures are basically considered personal property for as long as Lupita is paying off her lease. So when they're installed, still trade fixtures, they still belong to Lupita. When the lease takes effect, still trade fixtures, still belongs to Lupita. Even if Lupita defaults, she's still the business owner. And so those are still her trade fixtures. But when the lease expires, if she leaves them there, then those items will become real property and the owner of the property will get to keep them. Does everybody see somebody asking, why not D? Maybe Joe can clarify that a little bit, but I'm pretty sure that's because even though she's defaulted, she's still the business owner. And so those are still her trade fixtures. Thanks, Joe. Doing my best here. Maybe not my best, but the nerves have calmed down a little bit. You guys have been great. Um, Keeping Joe really busy over there too. I think that's awesome. Getting a lot of great information from him. Um, Everybody give me a thumbs up if you like having Joe in the chat. Kind of looks like he's killing it. All right. So I want to do another story question here. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate that. I think you guys are doing great. I'm really excited just to touch on this again. Really excited to be part of the community, and that's a huge part of it right there. You guys are awesome. All the time. Everybody that I've interacted with, since I've started here has been fantastic, and everybody's about making the community better and learning more. And it's one of my favorite things in life. Really, really appreciative that you guys have welcomed me into the community so warmly. It's awesome. Next question that I want to get to here. Teddy, Andy, and Peter are joint tenants, owning a parcel of land. Peter conveys his interest to his longtime friend, Dan. After the conveyance, Teddy and Andy, A, become joint tenants with Dan, B, remain joint tenants owning a 2/3 interest, C, become tenants in common, or D, continue to be joint tenants with Peter. So it's kind of another tricky one. Teddy, Andy, and Peter all start off as joint tenants. Peter gives his interest to his longtime friend, Dan. So after that happens, what is Teddy and Andy's ownership in this? What do you guys think? Mm-hmm. See a lot of C's being thrown out there, become tenants in common, um, and totally understand why that makes sense, because suddenly you don't have three people with time, title, interest, and possession with a unity of those four things. But Teddy and Andy still have um, a unity of time, title, interest, and possession. So they remain joint tenants owning a 2/3 interest. Dan, who now is owner of that third part, is he no longer has a unity of time with the other two. So his interest is different. But Teddy and Andy remain joint tenants owning a 2/3 interest. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? Um, as far as Teddy and Andy retain their unity of time, title, interest, and possession. So they remain joint tenants. What happens with Dan's portion of it is a little bit more confusing, and so we'll get into that. in a later webinar when we've got an opportunity to maybe go deeper into the concepts behind that. Cool, Shannon. Awesome. All right. I'm going to slow it down a little bit here, take a break from the story questions. Those ones are pretty intense, but they really allow us to sort of dial in our understanding of the concepts behind, you know, the vocabulary and all the terms that we're working on here. The word improvement would refer to all of the following except A, the foundation, B, the trade fixtures, C, streets, or D, a sanitary sewer system. Talking about an improvement. Improvements refer to real estate. So the word improvement would refer to all of the following except. Except which of these? Nice work, guys. All of the work, all of the questions that we talked about with trade fixtures, it's paid off. The word improvement refers to everything except trade fixtures. You see somebody threw out streets, Amanda. I can get how that one can be tricky because that's not really something that the owner deals with, but your taxes actually cover the streets. And so they are an improvement that you pay for with your property. I hope that makes sense. If not, maybe hit Joe up with that. He'll give you a more concise, in-depth explanation. Right. Got time for just a couple more here, so I want to get to one more story question about tenancy. A tenant's lease has expired, but the tenant has not vacated the premises or negotiated a renewal lease. The landlord has declared that the tenant is not to remain in the building. This situation is an example of A, tenancy at sufferance, B, tenancy at will, C, an estate from period to period, or D, an estate for years. Talking about an expired tenant's lease, he's still living on the premises. The landlord says, hey, you're a deadbeat, just like Malfred's talking about. The answer is A, tenancy at sufferance. Good job, everybody got that one right. And let's do last one. We're going to tie, oh, all right. That was the last one. Joe is going to jump on and chime in real quick. You there, Joe? All right. Hey, thanks, everybody. Thanks, Amanda. Really appreciate you guys. It went awesome. Like, I had a great time doing this, and I can't wait to see you guys probably next week doing another one. Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Suna.
Great job, Adrian.
Thanks, Joe. Much appreciated. Guys, probably next week doing another one. Thanks, Ann.
So everybody could hear me, right? So I just want to congratulate Adrian on doing a great job. If you guys heard the first time I did it, I invite you guys to listen to my first webinar I did. I sound a lot different then than I do now, and he did much better than I did, and he's only going to get much better. So we're super happy that he was able to do this. So thank you very much. And only going to get much better. As always, you guys have any questions, super happy that he was able to do let us know. So, all right, guys, Joe from PrepAgent with Adrian from PrepAgent as well. Yay.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Okay, see you guys tomorrow.